The darkness was alive, breathing, shifting, pressing in like a predator waiting to kill. EMT Alex Vega crawled through a jagged tunnel of pulverized concrete and twisted rebar, his helmet light slicing through the dust that hung like smoke. Every inhale scraped grit down his throat like glass shards. Every exhale sounded too loud in the suffocating black. Something groaned above him, a deep grinding moan of stressed concrete. He froze, heart pounding, afraid even his breath might bring the whole slab down. One shift, one wrong vibration, and the building that had already swallowed 3 floors would finish the job. His radio crackled, spitting static and broken fragments of voices. Distant, hopeless, no one was coming for him yet. Then, through the chaos and the crushing dark, he heard it. Not debris, not aftershocks. A voice, weak, broken. "Help, please, someone help me." Alex angled his light towards the sound and kept crawling, elbows grinding against shattered tile, gears snagging on steel. Dust rained from the ceiling with every movement, and then his beam caught her, a young woman pinned beneath the slab, blood pooling beneath her like an open wound. She was alive, but just barely. And then Alex saw her belly, swollen, tight and contracting. She wasn't just trapped, she was in labor. Another aftershock rumbled through the earth. Dust cascaded like gray snow. The ceiling groaned, a low warning Alex couldn't ignore. If the next tremor came, this bucket would become a tomb. He had one thought as he slid closer to her. How do you deliver life in a place built for death? How do you save a life when the world above is trying to bury you? Share your answer and don't forget to subscribe. 6 hours earlier, Alex Vega's alarm split the quiet at 5:47 a.m. He swung his legs over the edge of the bed, feet hitting cold linoleum, in a studio apartment that felt more like a storage unit than a home. One photo on the wall pulled his eyes every morning, a picture of him and his daughter, Sophia, grinning at the zoo. 8 years old, missing teeth, pure sunshine. He hadn't seen her in 3 weeks. The custody agreement didn't care about disaster calls or back-to-back shifts. Alex moved through his ritual in silence, gear bag on the table, trauma shears, airway kit, IV lines, meds. Everything checked twice, then a third time. Forget one thing in his line of work and people died. At the firehouse, the day smelled like coffee and diesel. Rookies buzzed around like flies on caffeine. Liam Diaz, fresh out of the academy, grinned as Alex walked in. "Nothing rattles Vega," Liam announced to the room, loud enough for Alex to hear. "Guy is a machine." Alex didn't answer. He just restocked his rig, face unreadable, hands steady as always. No one here saw the nightmares, the cold sweats at 3 a.m. Being the calm in the chaos was part of the job. Pretending was the rest. At 11:23 a.m., the tones dropped, loud, urgent, like a bomb going off in the bay. All units, magnitude 7.2 earthquake, epicenter downtown, multiple collapses, deploy all user teams immediately. The station froze for half a heartbeat, then exploded into motion. Boots pounded concrete, radio screamed. Somewhere, a siren started wailing. Alex was already moving, gears slamming into the back of his ambulance. He caught his reflection in the glass, jaw tight, eyes hard, ready for another call that could kill him. What he didn't know, the ground hadn't even started moving yet, and by the time it stopped, he'd be fighting for breath in a tomb of concrete, praying he could keep a newborn alive long enough to see daylight again. The street looked like the aftermath of a bombing. What had been a 6-story apartment complex hours ago now lay pulverized into slabs of concrete and tangled steel, stacked like a child's abandoned blocks. Dust choked the air, turning daylight into slicky gray haze. The smell of gas leaks mixed with scorched wiring biting at Alex Vega's nose as he stepped off the rig. He pulled his helmet tight and scanned the chaos. Firefighters wrestled with hoses near a ruptured gas line. Urban search and rescue teams crawled over debris piles, with dogs training at their leads. But it was the sound that pierced deeper than any sight. Thin, desperate, tapping coming from beneath the ruins, like ghostly fingers strumming on a coffin lid. 30 confirmed missing. The lead engineer barked at the incident command. His voice was raw, probably from shouting over generators and screens. The building's a dead man walking. Any more aftershocks and we're pulling everyone out. No one's pulling out. Captain Morrison snapped, his jaw clenched. Not while there's life under there. Alex arrived in time to hear it, the argument, the desperation. He wasn't supposed to feel adrenaline like this anymore. He was supposed to stay cool, methodical, unshaken. But the hair on his arms rose when the tapping came again. Louder this time, not random, rhythmic. Someone was alive down there, begging for a chance. "Where do you need me?" Alex said, his voice steady though his gut knotted tight. Morrison pointed to the east face of the wreck, a silver of darkness between two collapsed lamps, barely wider than a coffin lid. Voices from in there, too unstable for heavy equipment. "You're our smallest guy." Alex's stomach tipped, the gap angled downward into blackness. A tunnel of broken walls and dangling rebar. A single bad shift, and it would crash flat like a soda can. He crouched, pressed his palm to the top slab. It vibrated faintly, groaning like something alive. "You've got maybe 20 minutes before we pull out," Morrison warned. "That's not negotiable." Alex nodded, throat dry. 20 minutes, maybe less if the earth decided to shrug again. He clipped his radio to his vest, took a breath that tasted like dust and fear, and slid inside. The darkness swallowed him whole. His helmet light pierced maybe 3 feet ahead, revealing jagged teeth of concrete and twisted rods reaching like claws. Every shift of his body sent pebbles skittering into the void. His gear bag scraped the walls, snagging on rebar. The air was a toxic cocktail of gypsum dust and burned insulation, coating his tongue like chalk. He had to force himself to take slow breaths through the filter. Halfway in, his chest tightened, not from the crawl, but from what always came in spaces like this, that old, primal fear. He heard his ex-wife's voice in his head. "One day, that need to play hero is going to get you killed." And beneath that, Sophia's laugh, the last voicemail she'd sent him, chipper and bright. "Daddy, guess what? I beat my records at the monkey bars." He blinked hard and shoved the thought away. Focus, 1 inch at a time. "Help, please." The voice floated through the wreckage like a ghost, muffled but real. Female, weak. Alex wriggled through the sound, belly scraping on pulverized concrete. His knees hit something soft, a torn purse, the driver's license inside read, Emilia Restrepo, 26 years old. He pictured the name on the report. "Emilia, it's Alex. I'm a medic. Can you hear me?" "Here," came the whisper, then a low moan that made his blood run cold. His light finally caught her in a pocket of space, a cavity just big enough for 2 bodies. Emilia lay half on the side, pinned from the waist down by a slab of floor that might as well have been the weight of the whole world. Her dark hair was smattered with dust and blood, and her belly swollen, tight. 8 months, maybe more. Alex's pulse spiked. "Are you in labor?" Her head jerked in a shaky nod. Sweat gleamed on her forehead despite the chill. "Contractions. Started maybe an hour. My baby." "Active labor," In this tomb, Alex keyed his radio with hands that weren't as steady as he wished. Command, I've got one female, approximately 32 weeks, pinned under heavy debris. She's in labor. I need extraction priority 1. The reply was instant, and like a punch to the gut. Negative, Vega. Structures shifting every 5 minutes. We're at the collapse threshold. If it goes, we lose the whole crew. Another aftershock rumbled through the ground before Alex could answer. The tunnel convulsed like a throat swallowing him whole. Dust exploded in his face. Chunks of concrete rained down, one grazing his helmet hard enough to ring his ears. He sprawled over Emilia, shielding her head as best he could while his ribs screamed in protest. When it stopped, the world was a new shape. The ceiling above them sank lower. His radio squawked with frantic voices. Vega, status. He coughed dust from his lungs and answered hoarsely. Still here, she's alive, but my medbag's gone. He twisted to look. The quake had shifted the debris, sending his kit sliding into a crack too narrow for his arm. Everything. IV, airway kit, suction, delivery pack, gone. All he had now were the gloves in his pocket, a headlamp, and a body full of adrenaline. Another contraction hit Emilia like a freight train. Her scream echoed in the tiny space, raw and animal. Blood seeped hard and slicked beneath her hips. Alex's training took over. Even as his brain screamed this was insane, he'd delivered babies before, but never in a coffin of broken concrete. With an unstable structure over his head and no tools except his own 2 hands. His radio crackled again. Vega, you've got 15 minutes max before we pull you out, copy? He stared at Emilia's contorted face, at the terror in her eyes, at the faint sound, a heartbeat monitor somewhere under the debris, beeping erratically. Not hers, the baby's, hanging by a thread. 15 minutes, no gear, no guarantee they'd survive the next aftershock. Alex gripped her hand and forced his voice steady. Okay, Emilia, new plan. We're not waiting for extraction. Her breath came in ragged sobs. I can't. Yes, you can. We're bringing your baby into this world right here. He swallowed hard, tasting concrete and copper on his tongue. Above them, the slab groaned ominously, like the building itself was listening. We're going to do this now, before the building decides to bury us both. The aftershock passed, leaving a silence so complete it roared in Alex Vega's ears. His helmet light flickered across Emilia's face, chalk white, drenched in sweat, eyes wide with terror. No, 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 her voice cracked. Please, God, not here. Don't let me die here. Alex forced himself to steady his breathing, though every breath felt like inhaling powdered glass. The void around them seemed to shrink with every groan of the concrete. Their 20-minute window was nearly gone. He could feel the weight of pressing it down, like the tons of debris above their heads. Emilia, look at me, he said, sliding his gloves on tighter. You're not alone. I'm right here. We're going to do this together. Her next scream cut through the darkness like a blade. Another contraction. Violent. Urgent. Her body wasn't waiting for a rescue. Alex stripped off his jacket and jammed it beneath her head for a pillow. His trauma shears glinted in the headlamp glow as he slashed open fabric. Working with hands that trembled, not from fear, but from the tremor still rippling through the structure. His medical bag was gone, swallowed by the quake. All he had were his gloves, sanitizer, and grits. Listen to me, he said, keeping his voice level as the ground shifted beneath them. When the next one hits, you push, understand? Emilia nodded weakly, her lips gray with exhaustion. I can't. Yes, you can. The next contraction came like a freight train. Emilia bore down, screaming so loud Alex was sure the whole rescue team could hear. if they were still alive up there. In the dim glow, the baby's head crowned, slick and impossibly small. That's it, Alex guided with trembling hands, whispering prayers he hadn't said since childhood. His stomach dropped. The umbilical cord was looped around the baby's neck. Tight. No, no, no. His voice was barely a breath. He hooked a finger beneath the cord, tugging with every ounce of strength until finally it slipped free. Relief lasted a single heartbeat before another aftershock ripped through the ruin. Concrete above them cracked like rifle fire. Dust exploded around them, choking, blinding. Alex shielded Emilia with his body as fragments rained down. When the shaking eased, the baby slid into his hands in the rush of blood and fluid, tiny, fragile, silent. Emilia, he said softly, forcing a smile she couldn't see. You did it, but the baby didn't cry. Alex turned away, his back hiding what Emilia couldn't bear to know. He cleared the airway with one finger, tilted his head, started compressions. 2 fingers, 5 bumps, 1 breath, repeat, again. Come on, little one. Nothing. He bit down hard, fighting panic. His own daughter's face flashed in his mind. Sophia at the zoo, ice cream smeared on her cheek, laughing in the sunlight. He wasn't going to let this child die in the dark. One more cycle, then a gasp, a weak shuddering cry that split the silence like a miracle. Thin, reedy, but alive. She's breathing, Alex whispered, tears mixing with dust on his face. She's alive. Emilia sobbed in relief, but Alex didn't have time to celebrate. Blood pooled beneath her hips, warm against his knees. Too much blood, a postpartum hemorrhage, and no tools to stop it. He tore his shirt into strips and packed the wound. His movements desperate, clumsy. Then it came. The sound he'd been dreading since the first quake. A low grinding moan from the ceiling above, steel snapping like brittle bones. The building wasn't groaning anymore. It was a decision, and it had chosen now to finish what the earth started. The beam shifted again with a sickening groan. Alex's entire body screamed in protest as he pressed his shoulder harder against the fractured concrete. His breath came in sharp bursts, each exhale frosting the air. Sweat and blood stung his eyes, but he didn't dare blink. If he lost even an inch, the weight above would crush them both. Hold on, Emilia, he whispered, his voice raw. She didn't answer. Her head lolled to the side, lips pale, breaths shallow. He reached out with one trembling hand, squeezed her wrist, still a pulse, faint but there. The sound of grating metal erupted above. Then a sliver of light split the darkness. Rescue voices boomed through the dust. Vega, can you hear us? Yes, he croaked, nearly choking on the grit in his throat. Mother's unconscious, severe hemorrhage, baby stable, get her out now. A small rescue basket dropped through the hole, swaying violently in the dust-choked air. It was barely big enough for the newborn. Alex pried the baby gently from Emilia's chest, feeling her trembling hands tighten in protest. He tore the last strips of his shirt and wrapped the infant tight, tucking the tiny form into the steel cradle. The straps sliced into his raw fingers as he cinched them, locking the final buckle with his teeth. Basket secure, he shouted, lungs burning. The cable jerked, and the baby began its slow ascent, spinning towards daylight like a fragile miracle. A second basket clanked its way down, larger this time, but swinging wildly on frayed cable. Alex dragged it close with one arm while the other kept his shoulder jammed under the fractured beam, muscles screaming under the crushing weight. Stay with me, he muttered, working the frame beneath her crushed legs, fighting gravity and physics at the same time. The straps dangled, biting into his forearm, but he forced them tight with his teeth. "She's secure." His voice cracked on the last word. "Get her up." The winch groaned, and Emilia began to rise inch by inch, her limp body swaying in the dark like a ghost. Every pull sent vibrations through the slab above. Each tremor another chance for the concrete to finish what the quake started. Alex stayed locked in place, a human brace holding back an avalanche. His spine felt like it would snap, his breath coming in ragged gasps that froze in the cold air. Now it was his turn, if he could make it. "Your turn, Vega," a rescuer called. "Move." Alex looked at the fractured beam pressing into his shoulders. He'd been holding it off for so long that his arms were numb, his back an inferno of pain. The instant he shifted, it would come down. There'd be no time to clear the tunnel. He tilted his head back towards the light. His throat burned as he forced out the words. "Clear the area. Vega, don't do this." But he was already moving. With a grunt that tore from deep in his chest, he shoved the beam sideways, enlarged for the opening. The world exploded. Concrete roared like an avalanche as the ceiling collapsed behind him. A jagged slab slammed into his legs, pinning him halfway out. Hands grabbed his arms, strong hands, hauling with desperate strength. For a split second, he thought that they wouldn't make it. Then, the pressure released, and Alex was yanked into blinding white daylight as the tunnel vanished in a storm of dust and steel. He lay on his back, gulping air like a drowning man, snowflakes melting on his blood-streaked face. The sky above was gray and merciless, but it was still a sky, and he was still alive. "Got him!" someone shouted. Voices blurred around him. Gloved hands cut away his shredded uniform, wrapping him in thermal blankets. Someone pressed an oxygen mask over his mouth, and warm air filling his frozen lungs. He tried to speak, to ask about Emilia and the baby, but his voice came out broken. The medic leaned close. "They're alive, Alex, both of them, because of you." He wanted to answer, but the darkness surged up like a tide, and this time he let it take him. When Alex opened his eyes again, the world was warm, too warm. Canvas walls, the hum of generators, a rhythmic beeping somewhere close. He turned his head slowly and saw an ivy line in his arm. His hands bandaged, his uniform replaced with a thin hospital gown. "You're awake." The voice snapped him fully alert. He looked toward the sound and froze. "Sophia," his voice cracked. His daughter stood by the cot, clutching a piece of cardboard covered in crooked letters. "My dad, my hero." Tears glittered in her eyes, but her smile was fierce. "You scared me," she whispered, her small hand curling around his bandaged fingers. Alex swallowed hard, his chest tightening more than the debris ever had. "I promised I'd come back, and you did," she said softly. Before he could answer, another figure appeared in the doorway. Emilia, pale but alive, holding a tiny bundle swaddled in white. The baby's face peeked out, pink and perfect, a wisp of dark hair curling over her forehead. "We wanted to thank you," Emily said, her voice trembling, "for everything." Alex stared at the baby, his throat closing. He thought of the rubble, the crushing weight, the seconds where death had felt inevitable. And then he thought of this child breathing against her mother's chest. "What's her name?" he asked quietly. "Alexa," Emilia said. "Alexa Restrepo." He blinked hard. "You didn't have to." "Yes, I did." Her eyes locked with his. "She's alive because you refused to give up. So am I." Alex looked down at Sophia, who was still gripping his hand like she'd never let go. 2 lives in his hands. 2 reasons every impossible second had been worth it. The 2 faces in front of him. One he'd known for 8 years and one brand new, both staring back at him with the same quiet truth. He'd made it back. Against all odds, he'd made it home. He looked at Sophia and whispered, "Remind me to tell you a story someday." She smiled through her tears. About what? About a day when being a dad and being a hero felt the same. He closed his eyes, Sophia's small hand in one, and the memory of Alexa's first cry in the other, and thought, I almost didn't make it back, but I did. 3 weeks later, Alex sat in a molded plastic chair in a sunlit hospital room, watching Emilia cradle her daughter. Baby Alexa's tiny fist gripped her mother's finger with a kind of stubborn strength Alex would never forget. "The doctors say she's perfect," Emilia said softly, adjusting the blanket around her newborn. "No complications, no trauma. They're calling her a miracle baby." Alex smiled, though his body still ached from the rescue. His spine bore the memory of that collapsing beam, his shoulder wrapped in bandages from the torn muscles that might never fully heal. Physical therapy was helping. The nightmares, not as much. "Have you thought about what you'll tell her?" he asked. "When she's old enough to understand?" Emilia's gaze dropped to Alexa's face. The baby blinked up the ceiling as if the white tiles were the most fascinating thing in the universe. "I'll tell her the truth," Emilia whispered, "that she came into the world when everything was falling apart. But someone refused to let go. Someone who gave everything to make sure she lived." Her eyes lifted to Alex, shimmering with tears. "I'll tell her about the man who held up a building for us." Alex swallowed hard, feeling the weight of her words settle somewhere deep in his chest. 3 months later, the nightmares had dulled, but the world hadn't forgotten. The Vega Protocol, that's what the department called it now. A statewide upgrade to obstetric emergency kits for all urban search and rescue teams. Emilia stood at the legislative hearing, Alexa perched on her hip, giving testimony about preparedness while news cameras flashed. "She's here because someone didn't quit," Emilia told the committee, kissing her daughter's head, "and I hope no one else ever has to make that choice without the right tools." Alex watched from the back of the room, feeling something he hadn't felt in years, pride without guilt. That night, his phone buzzed. Sophia. "Dad, did you see the article?" Her voice crackled with excitement. "You're famous. Mom says you're like Superman." Alex chuckled, leaning against the wall of his apartment. "Not quite Superman." "You held up a building, Dad? That's cooler than Superman. Can I see you this weekend? I want the real story." Alex felt a warm bloom inside him, fierce and steady. "Yeah, kiddo, you'll hear it all." 6 months later, on a crisp spring morning, Alex stood at the edge of the rebuilt apartment complex, a memorial plaque gleaming on the new facade. He traced the engraved words with his fingers. "In honor of courage beyond fear." Behind him, Sophia tugged at his sleeve. "Dad," she whispered, pointing. Across the courtyard, Emilia waved, holding Alexa, now chubby and laughing, sunlight glinting off the wisp of dark hair curling on her forehead. Alex lifted Sophia into his arms, her sign from the hospital still folded in his jacket pocket. "My dad, my hero." He looked at both girls, the one he'd raised and the one he'd fought like hell to save, and thought, some moments don't make you a hero. They just show you who you've been all along. As the wind swept through the memorial garden, carrying the sound of laughter, Alex whispered the truth he finally believed. Everyday heroes are all around us.